Hello again, everyone. We are back with chapter 3.4. We're going to be graphing linear equations using slope. So we need to discuss slope and what slope is. So we have slope. So this is the vertical change over the horizontal change, okay? In a graph. It'll make a little more sense when we get to it with some visuals and with some pictures. What you need to know about slope, slope is denoted by the letter M, okay? They don't use S because S can be mistaken for, a 5 really easily. So we use the letter M, so you're going to see M even in your textbook, and that's going to let you know that that's slope. So M is, you may remember from school, rise over run, right? Rise over run. And this is going to be the same as up or down, depending on the sign. And right or left, right? Depending on the signs. Like I said, it'll make more sense later. You may also remember from maybe previous classes, maybe in high school, that we have a formula for slope. So what's nice is we have a set formula that we can use, and we're just going to be substituting those numbers in, those values, and solving. So it makes it really easy, okay? So M equals, this is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. This is letting you know what parts of the point that you're going to be plugging into your equation here, okay? So if we had 2 points, okay, so these are going to be our fake points for right now until we do an example. This will be our first point. This is x sub 1, y sub 1 that you would substitute in, and this point would be x sub 2, y sub 2 that you would be substituting in, okay? All right, and we're going to be getting more to that here in a minute. So let's go ahead and look at some pictures, right, some graphs of slope. Okay, so you may remember from slope, right, looking at a graph, and let's say this is our graph, and we would look here in our graph, and let's say we have a little triangle here, and you remember maybe, can't talk. You may remember this as being the run, and this is being the rise, okay? Now, we do have different types of slope, okay? And you are required to do this on your test. You're gonna have a problem where it asks you to find the slope, and then they want you to go ahead and do a quick sketch of the graph and tell us what direction the slope is going, okay? So make sure you pay attention to that on your test. You read a graph just like you would read a sentence from left to right. So let's say we have a rectangular coordinate system, and let's say this is our graph. We're reading the graph from left to right. So from left to right, the direction of this slope is negative, right? It's going down. So this graph here, negative slope. From right to left, it's going down, negative slope, okay? Let's look at another graph. And let's say this is our graph. Once again, you're reading the graph from left to right. Well, from left to right, the direction is going up. It's going up. So this would be considered a positive slope, okay? A positive slope. All right, we have 2 more kinds. So let's make another graph. And let's say we have that nice horizontal line there. When it's a horizontal line, we have 0 slope, okay? So horizontal line, 0 slope. And the last type of slope that we have, I keep the board from falling over, would be a vertical graph. And when it's vertical, we do not have a slope. So this is called undefined. So we've talked about undefined values before, so we can have an undefined slope, okay, and this would be a vertical line, okay? This will come up again in your test, so make sure you do pay close attention to this. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and do some examples where we're going to go ahead and substitute those values in and find the slope. Okay, all right, so let's say they tell us to find the slope of the points, and let's say they gave us 4, -3, and -2, 4. Okay, they gave us our 2 points. The first thing that I like to do is I like to go ahead and mark which one is going to be the x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. So this is your first point here. We know this is our x coordinates. This is going to be your x sub 1, y sub 1. Here, this is going to be your x sub 2, y sub 2. So it just kind of helps you stay straight with where these need to be plugged in. All right, so now we have our formula, right? M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. All you're doing right now is substituting those values in. So now I have m equals, well, y sub 2 is 4, so we're going to plug that in. And we have subtraction, y sub 1. Now, pay attention here. Y sub 1 is a -3. So make sure you put that -3 in parentheses, just like we have done with substitutions before. All right, this is all over. X sub 2 is -2 minus x sub 1 is 4. Now we need to go ahead and apply our sign rules, right, that we've learned at the very beginning of the semester. So I have 4 minus a -3. Those two become positive, right? Remember our sign rules, positive. So that's now 4 plus 3, which is 7. And let's look at the denominator. So I have -2 minus 4. So remember when we've dealt with this before, we have added the negative. So now I have -2 plus -4, that's -6, okay? Typically, when you have one that's positive and one that's negative, you write the negative up in the numerator. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing, right? Because they're opposites. Positive and a negative is always going to stay negative. So this is -7/6 is typically how you would write that for your slope, okay? You do not change slope back into a mixed number, okay? You'll see when we get to graphing this later on that you need to keep it as 7/6. You can't do slope with the rise over run if it's a mixed number, okay? So you want to keep this as the improper fraction or the fraction if it's a proper fraction, okay? All right, let's go ahead and do one more example of those, and then we're going to start graphing these. All right, so we're doing the exact same thing. This time they're giving us points of 3, 4, and 1, -2. So same thing as last time, I would go ahead and label them x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2, okay? We have our formula, m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now we can go ahead and substitute our values in accordingly. So m equals y sub 2 is -2 minus y sub 1 is 4 over x sub 2 is 1 minus x sub 1 is 3, okay? And then once again from here we're going to apply our sign rules that we have gone over all semester. So this -2 minus 4, we need to add the negative so that we end up with -6. And 1 minus 3, right, if you want to add the negative you can, that's fine. And that should be a -2. Now, we can simplify this, okay? -6 divided by -2 ends up being a +3. So our slope here is a +3, okay? Slope here is +3. So hopefully that makes a little more sense. Okay, doing another example. All right, let's look at graphing. So now we need to be able to graph the line with slope of 1/4 and a y-intercept of -3, okay? And we have to be able to graph this. So I got my graph ready. The first thing you want to do when you're graphing using this method is you want to find the y-intercept first. That is the first point that you have, the only point that you have when you're using this method to go by. So we know that the y-intercept is -3, but we need the whole point to graph. So remember, the y-intercept is when x is 0, y is -3. So we have our first point. So we're going to go ahead and graph 0, -3. So 0 is telling you go right and left. Nowhere, and go down -3. So here is 0, -3, our y-intercept. Now we're going to use our y-intercept and find our second point of the graph by using our slope, okay, 1/4. So remember before we did rise over run 1/4, okay? So this +1 is telling us to rise 1. This run is positive. It's telling us to run to the right 4 because it's positive. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's our second point on the graph. Then we can connect the dots, extend the lines, and add the arrows. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too bad for you. And we're going to do another one here, okay? All right. Okay, so we're doing the same thing, except this time they're giving us the x-intercept, or y-intercept, I'm sorry, is 0, 4, and slope is -4/3, okay, -4/3. So remember, this is still our rise over run, okay? And now we need to go ahead and come up with our graph, right? Rectangular coordinate system. Let's see, we need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now we can go ahead and graph our y-intercept first. So 0, 4 needs to be first. So we're going to the right and left 0, and we're going up 4. So there's our first point for a graph. Now we're going to use our slope as -4/3. So our rise this time is negative, right? It's a -4. So that means we're going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're running, that's a +3, right? So 1, 2, 3, running to the right. There is our second point for our graph. Once again, connect the lines, extend your arrows, okay? Not too bad. So I hope that's not too difficult for you guys. I hope it's making sense. All right, so now we need to do one where we're putting all of this together that we've done this whole section. So they're going to ask you to find the slope and graph, and they're going to give us 2, -3, -1, -3, okay? So first thing, once again, we got to find the slope first. So we're going to go ahead and label our x1, y1, x2, y2, and then we're going to go ahead and substitute them back into our formula, okay? So now I have m equals, well, y2 is, -3, minus y1 is -3. That needs to go in parentheses, okay? All over x2 is -1, minus x1 is 2, okay? Now we're going to go ahead and apply our sign rules, right? We've been doing all semester. So here, a -3 minus a -3, those two negatives cancel and become positive. So -3 plus 3 becomes 0. Over, now I have -1 minus 2. So once again, I'd add the negative and I'd get -3. So remember, we can do 0 divided by -3 is 0, okay? It's a bad 0, all right. 0. So our slope's 0. We still have to graph this, okay? We still have to graph, all right? All right, so what you're going to do to graph is you're going to go ahead and you would pick a point. So let's go ahead and look at 2, -3. So I'd graph 2, -3 to the right, 2, down, -3. And we can go ahead and graph -1, -3. So to the left 1, down -3. You're going to connect the dots, extend the lines, and add the arrows. Now, you need to make sure that your graph is correct. We have a slope of 0. So if you look at the pictures we did before, right, back through here, slope of 0 was a horizontal line. So it's a good way that you can kind of check yourself there. Okay. I also wanted to let you know real quick, like I said on that test, you're going to have to say if the slope is positive or if it's negative. So if we went back to a problem that we found slope for, so let's say the slope we found to be is 3. So when we had our points of 3, 4, and 1, -2, and we did all that work to find that the slope was positive 3. So that's half your answer for that section on the test. The other part is you need to do a quick graph, and it doesn't need to be perfect at all, okay? Just a sketch so you get an idea of the direction of the slope. And you're gonna carefully graph real quick. 3, 4, so to the right 3, up 4, so it'd be somewhere in there. And then I would look at 1, -2, so I know I'm going to the right 1, I'm going down -2. So it would be this way. I would connect the dots, send lines, add the arrows, and then I would read the direction of the slope from left to right. So looking at this from left to right lets you know this was a positive slope. So that's what I need you to do on that section of the test. Okay, so just so you kind of had an idea. This doesn't need to be perfect. It's just a general so you have the idea of the direction of the graph. Okay, all right, so that is the end of 3.4. Once again, homework questions are on Canvas. If you need anything, please let me know. And then we're getting into the last section, 3.5. All right, see you guys.